Good morning. My name is Benjamin Moeller. I'm a paleontologist, and someday I'll learn where on my phone the mic is located so I don't cover it with my fingers, but today is not that day. Um, what today is the first day of Menefee Expedition 2024, which is very exciting. We're here looking for fossils of animals and plants that lived 80 million years ago out here in the San Juan Basin of northwestern New Mexico. And this is the nicest I'm going to look all day because I'm going to have to braid this and stuff it back and then put some sunscreen on me. I use the mineral stuff, which makes you look quite ghastly. So this is the only forward-facing shot you're going to get of me today. And most of the crew has not arrived yet, so it's just myself and then the two other principal investigators on this project, Dr. Heather Smith and Brent Adrian. So today we're going to be doing a lot of recon and figuring out where we want to put our crew. A big part of managing trips like this is just kind of figuring out where to apply the talents of the people who volunteer to help do this with us. So without further ado, let's get to it. We've made it to our field sites, and one of the first things that we're looking at here are not bones actually, but amber. So this is fossilized tree sap that are in these thick, almost coal beds. This is kind of the lowest grade coal you can get. It's called humate. It's full of all kinds of organic material. Sometimes you can find leaves in it, but for the most part, it's just this very low grade organic carbon, but it is full of amber. And this is something that we're very interested in researching. So we're going to spend some time sampling this bed and collecting this amber. We have no idea if there might be pollen grains in this, if there might be insects, if there might be other kinds of cool stuff. So there's a lot that you can do with this material, so we're going to sample this. So if you've watched previous year's editions of Menefee Expedition video, you should be familiar with this. But if this is your first year joining us, I'll give a little bit more context for what we're seeing here. So the Menefee Formation, which is what we're seeing all around here, is a package of rock that is between 84 and 78.5 million years old. And it takes place along the coastal territories of an extinct continent called Laramidia. So today, this is New Mexico, North America, but we refer to the extinct continent, this region of the western US, as Laramidia. And it's separate from the eastern half, Appalachia, because of very high sea levels during the late Cretaceous. And so while I'm picking through this humate layer, again, recall that we're looking for amber and other evidence of organic matter. And just as today in areas like, the Louisiana Bayou, we're looking at kind of a swampy region right along the coast. So there's influence of marine sediment and potentially animals as well coming into the saltwater regions, the brackish regions, and freshwater stuff that is washing out to sea. And when we're talking about geology and sediment and layers, we are literally talking about layers like a cake. So as we look down, keep an eye on this humate layer and follow it with my finger kind of across in that direction. And then when you go up, you go from this rich organic layer to this light gray mudstone. And so what this represents is a time period where, for a certain amount of time, that takes from the bottom of the humate layer to the top, however many tens or hundreds of thousands of years that was, there was deposition in this area of organic matter, probably deposited in water. So this is a very wet, humid, think humate, think of a humid environment, swampy. And then something changed. And there was no longer a huge influx of organic matter, and instead we have this light gray mudstone instead. And before the humate, it was that way as well. So something changed to cause there to be this huge deposition of organic material in this area, and then above that it stopped. So you can read rocks like a book, except instead of opening like pages, they're stacked. And the pages that are lower in the book are older, and the pages on the top are higher, usually. In most cases, that's how it's going to work. So this stuff over here is older, closer to the 84 million year boundary, but probably again closest to 80. And then the higher up you go, the closer you get to that 78.5 million year boundary. But again, in here, this is all probably around 80 million years old and just varying in terms of tens to hundreds of thousands of years. If you'll walk with me a little ways, I can show you kind of the same idea. So again, here at the base, we've got this mudstone. You walk upwards, up the hill, you're going forward in time. You hit a humate layer. It's not too thick. And again, you break that apart and it's full of organic material. There's a small fleck of amber right there. So again, we've got this humate bench. Move up in elevation, we're moving forward in time again. We've got layers and layers of mudstone. And we keep advancing up and up and up. And of course, while we're doing this, we're also looking for dinosaur and turtle and croc fossils, which are far more common in this mudstone layer. And then eventually, you go forward enough in time, you hit yet another humate layer. So something changes again, back to this precondition where suddenly we're creating coal again. And it's not the kind of coal that you could burn. The folks who came out here about a century ago to survey the Menefee Formation determined this stuff ain't worth burning. It's not economically viable, which is good for us because that means it was kept safe and the fossils were not destroyed for the sake of the fossil fuel industry, which is really good. So here's another site you might not expect paleontologists to be interested in sampling. This is a harvester anthill. This is a very common species in this area. And because there's such intense weather, they armor their nests with all these small shards of rocks and concretions. The ironstone concretions around here fragment and they pick up small pieces of them. But they also pick up, occasionally, little fossils. If I can get my camera to focus, that is an itty bitty little tooth in that vial that I just picked up. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time scanning this area. Heather's just over the crest looking at another bone. I don't think I've introduced everyone on the trip yet, but I'm going to need to do that later. So this is what we're looking at. Now, something you're not going to necessarily see me do, but you should trust is happening, is every time we find something, we've got to make notes. So the scientific part of this process is making sure that we're collecting all of the relevant data that comes with the fossils themselves. Otherwise, each discovery is not actually all that useful. So I'm going to spare you guys the bureaucratic part of this and just show you the fossil finding. But keep in mind that if you ever encounter something you think might be a fossil, or if you do a trip like this yourself, keep in mind you have to be taking note of exactly where you are, which you should be doing anyway to make sure you're collecting places that you know you're allowed to collect. I think that might be another little tooth right there. Yeah, probably. You've got to know exactly where it came from so that you can go do research on, the sediment, the elevation, what is nearby. If you're not collecting data, you're not doing science. So I'm going to put the camera down and put that guy in a vial. So I spent a few more minutes just checking out the surface, and I managed to pick up several additional teeth. So here in the Menefee Formation, again, we could be finding remains of fish. Focus. So these could belong to fish. Some of them could belong to small reptiles. We have found small dinosaur teeth here before, both from those could be from animals that are just small individuals. You would also expect to find juveniles of larger dinosaurs as well. There should also be crocs and other stuff. So really, looking for microfossils will give you a really interesting cross-section of all the different species that are living in the same area. So that's why this research is so cool. And we've got a bag of sediment ready to go, so I'll be looking at this under a microscope in controlled conditions to see if I can find more. Some petrified wood, very common sight in the Menefee. This stuff on here is lichen. It's a very interesting desert organism. This is a tree that was growing 80 or so million years ago, so here's a big chunk of it. You follow down past Brent's feet there, and there's a couple more chunks. So we're very interested in knowing what kinds of plants we're growing here in the Menefee Formation, because plants have different growing requirements. They have different tolerances for salt and things like that, and that can tell us a lot about what's going on. Got to take time to appreciate the local flora too. This is globe mallow, very common desert plant. Adds some nice color to the area. So we're back in camp now. There's the same teeth that we picked up earlier today that we were going to examine. Whoa! Under the microscope so we can look closer at their anatomy. I have some guesses as to what they are. I am not going to share them because tentative IDs are to be kept to myself. But what I can say is that this is far more teeth than have ever been found in the Menefee expedition in these areas that we've been searching since 2011. Last year, we were really excited to just find a couple. 8 in one day is really awesome. So that is, I think, a good sign of stuff to come. And if you want to see more, I'll see you tomorrow.